All yours, Justin.
All right. So I wanted to go over some of the errata changes that I made um, over the past, I guess, week and a half. Most of what I'm going to show you is in master. I'm going to show you one little UI change that is not in master yet. But the underlying core underlying changes are there today. Um, the goal of this when we started the errata stuff was when we started going through the stories, it sort of became apparent that the applicability information was just not going to be able to be um, queried efficiently and effectively from pulp in real time. So we decided to bring that in-house or into the database. And while I was at it, we had discussed for a long time trying to migrate more from Elasticsearch to Scope Search, or at least investigate and see if it was feasible to do. So I decided to go ahead and give that a old college try while I was doing the applicability stuff, and it worked out really well, I think. So I'm going to go through some of the code, um, like I said, and just kind of show you what we have now to give you an idea of how it's different from what was there before. So to start with, we now have a erratum object that is in the database and is a active record object. As you can see here, it contains most everything in the erratum, the title, the description, all that jazz. We also have an erratum package, which contains the packages that are in the erratum bugzillas, and erratum CVEs. Um, so here I'll get the first erratum, and you can see it's a whatever netcf is, and we can just go ahead and easily query the bugzillas and get the ID and the URL. So here the errata is in the database. It's very similar to before when we imported it into Elasticsearch. It's just now we're importing it into the database, which was a little. You might would expect it to be a little more involved in inserting to the database, but sort of the way before we were transforming the JSON from pulp into a model level object and then converting that to JSON and throwing that to Elasticsearch. So if we were throwing the stuff straight from pulp to Elasticsearch, that probably would have been easier, but wouldn't have given us everything we needed. But so here we're just sort of doing a single, I guess, parsing of the data from pulp, and I'll show you that in a second. But so it also, this is fully tied into Scope Search, so we can do something like search for um, search for all erratum with this bugzilla. We see that. We could search for anything that has a title with kernel in the name. We can search for, let's see, anything that actually has a package name with kernel. You can actually search for specific Nevra. So you can search for Show you the errata. So it is a bit more intuitive of a search syntax. It gives us the autocomplete that the scope search already has. I think you can do something like, let's see, Rails console. I believe it's autocomplete 4. Nope, no, maybe not. Where is it? There we go. So it auto completed, that. Partha asked, can you go over the main reason for the change? I went over a little bit of it. The main reason that we had discussed moving from Elasticsearch to Scope Search was partially to the friendly nature of Scope Search. We could invest a lot of time into Elasticsearch, but if it was just as fast to move to something that we're not maintaining, I think that makes sense to do. I think that's the main reason, and to get consistency with Foreman. Let me show you. So this is the errata model. As you can see, the system errata are a relationship to or system are tied to errata via their applicability. The repositories that the errata are in are tied together. Here we have the Bugzillas, CVEs, packages, and then there's all the scope search information. So you can search on errata ID by the name ID, title, severity, errata type, CVEs, Bugzillas, and packages, and package names. Package and package name. Let's see. And so you have some, let me scroll back to the top. You see that Katello erratum includes this pulp content unit, and that gives a lot of the functionality that any sort of pulp unit that is in repositories would have. And I'll show you some of that in a second. So there's not a lot in this file. There's stuff related to applicability and systems, because that's unique to errata. The one thing this file needs to implement to be a proper pulp content unit is it needs a content type. It needs to specify the relationship class of itself to a repository, and it needs to respond to this update from JSON. And what this is doing is basically importing or updating the errata with information from pulp. So it's taking all of the attributes of the errata and updating the errata with those attributes, essentially. And then updating the individual Bugzillas, CVEs, and packages. I imagine most of the other units would probably just be a single table and not be these 4 tables here, just depending on the unit. But errata has a lot of a multitude of relationships, so hence the need for these other things. So that's really all that is in the erratum class. It's, as you can see, it's very, very small. If I'll go ahead and look at the pulp unit. The idea of this was, the idea of this was to have something that, if we go and do packages, package groups, Puppet modules, we could easily implement an additional type into the database just by creating the database tables and having it include this module. So this provides a lot of things, such as like a query for what repositories it's in, fetching the pulp data, importing all units of this type. So for example, in the console, I can just do And away it goes fetching from pulp, and it's doing paged requests to pulp, and then you see it just churning away at the database. So when we implement packages, you'll get this basically for free. And as part of this, it actually fetches the repository associations and inserts those. And the inserting of the repository associations is actually raw SQL. If we look at the repository erratum association, we include a little warning here that we are doing direct inserts and deletes, and that's mainly for performance. As part of any repository, there may be 12,000 packages. So instead of going through active record for all the callbacks and hooks, which we don't need at this point, we just do the straight SQL inserts, which turns out to be extremely fast, as you would imagine. So these are some of the base functions that should be applicable to any content unit, package, Puppet module, etc. And you see it's done. 2400 errata. And so one other change that I made as part of this was, and actually I did forget one thing. The rake command was updated to actually run erratum import all now. So anytime you run rake Katello reindex, it'll do exactly like it did before. It's just instead of Elasticsearch, it'll pull it into our database. So the next major, are there any questions about that? I'm sorry, going on to the next topic. Alrighty. So in the next topic was applicability. There was a lot of requests in SAT5 and in SAT6 to be able to see what errata apply to a system from the synced content and library. So I have my content views in dev or production. Heartbleed bug errata is released, and I need to know what systems it's applicable for. So since I was going in and mucking with all of this stuff, it made sense to just go ahead and do that as part of this. So one thing oh yeah, good call, Eric. I meant to actually discuss that. Let me step back a second. So previously with errata and today with packages, testing was very difficult because you had to fetch things from pulp. You had to search for things in Elasticsearch. You can't easily test either of those, without running with VCR or whatnot in live mode. But now with things in the database, you actually can. So if we look at like our test fixtures models, you can see that there are erratum now in the fixtures. And they have systems applicable to them. They're in repositories. I think, yeah, they have packages. So this means that you can actually run tests on applicability, on listing package or listing errata for repositories, things like that were very difficult to test before. So for example, if we look at So if we look at here, if you look here, we just have a normal model test, just basically, testing that we can grab the applicable errata properly. And in this case, this next thing that I'm going to tell you about, that I started telling you about, this is more important to actually test. So as I said, customers have requested a lot to be able to see what errata are applicable once they're synced. So if Heartbleed gets synced down, which systems in production need this heartbeat errata, even if it's not available to them in their environment or content view. And so this sort of splits off changes how we calculate applicability. So now we calculate it based off the library repo and then trim the results to what is actually in the content view and environment. So you see here in this test, for example, or let's see, test applicable is testing that the system has applicable errata coming straight from the database. This is testing that applicable and available are equal, and then we move the system to a content view that has fewer erratum. It, I believe, only has this security errata. It doesn't have any of the others, and we can see that this security errata is actually available to the system in its content view and environment. So let me demonstrate that to you in the UI. And this part is not available in master today, and subject to change still. So here we have a system. It's in the rel content view in dev. If we go to errata, we can see that there are 2 errata available for it. So I could check those.
Justin, we can't see your browser.
Oh, good call. Is that better?
Yep.
All right, thanks. So here we're on the errata list for a content host. We're looking at the errata for the current environment, dev for the rel content view. So it only has 2 errata available for it. So I could click here and hit apply. But if I wanted to see which errata are available for the previous environment, which would be library and rel, I can see those. And you see there's only these 2 are available, and these 2 are not available. So I can't actually select those. And then in the same manner, I can just say, show me based on everything in library. And you see here that, again, these 2 are available, and then there's 150 other ones that are not currently available. So that sort of helps show customers, in this instance, from the single content host case, what all is applicable to the system, even if it's not in its current environment. And this paradigm we expect to bring to the other errata pages as they are written. When we show, like, for example, for a particular errata or erratum, what systems are available, or what systems it is applicable to, even if it's not available to it. Let's see. And so that's a pretty big change in how we're now storing applicability. We can query it much more efficiently and whatnot. And even, let's see. Yeah, okay. And then if there are any questions about that, or if there are no questions about that, the last thing that I wanted to show you, oops. If I can remember where it is. Is that the binding to Yum repositories is now done, is now saved in the database. So for example, whereas before we would just throw the list of repositories IDs at pulp and let pulp save it, it's now saved into our database as a system repository object. If I can find that. I think I did move that to system. It does not actually talk to pulp correctly. Yeah. So here, this is taking in a list of repo paths. This is when the client reports what repositories it's actually using. So it says, oh, I'm using, this rel6 server RPM's repo. It tells us the path, and we go through and look up the repository from the path. We then save those. So see, we're just setting bound repositories, and then save the system object, and then propagate that to pulp, and then regenerate the applicability. And as part of this, actually, the generate applicability is now a Dyneflow task. Since we're triggering something in pulp, waiting for it to finish, and then importing that back into Katello, into the database, is now a Dyneflow task. So if there's any failure or anything, you'll actually see that. And that's, I think, about all I had to show. That was a lot of information. Are there any questions? Oh, let's see. There's a couple questions. Can you sort available versus not, or filter? Can you sort available versus not? On which screen or on which list are you talking about?
I was talking with that errata page. You had like the page where you're showing the page you're showing. You're listing like the
This page.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, that one. Exactly.
You can't. In fact, this page currently just shows all the errata. Like, it's not paginated at all. And it was sort of useless, or not useless, but it was difficult to paginate it before just because of the way we had to fetch the data from pulp. You basically had to fetch all of the data anyways and perform some manipulation on it. But we could turn this page into a paginated page and do sorting on the server. Right now, it's just all the data is on the client, so it wouldn't be hard to sort.
Or you can even do, I was even thinking like some checkbox to say only show the available ones. I don't really care about what's already. I mean,
that's the whole purpose of this drop down, right? This is just showing me what's available.
Oh, only the library. But I thought it showed both, no? I'm thinking wrong.
When you're showing from the current environment, that's only what's available.
Okay. Oh, okay. Got it. Okay, thanks.
It's when we go to the others, like library, synced content. This is showing me everything.
Interesting. Okay. Thanks.
So let's see. Yvonne, you said the info about packages on the system is still loaded from pulp. Yes, that is not in the database yet. If we move, for example, the system object or the content host object to scope search for all its pages, indexing and searching and everything, we'd probably want to move that into the database as well.
Yeah, thanks. And also, so I probably missed the mechanism how the applicability is computed for the environments right now. So it's all computed on the pulp, and we then filter that based on the repositories, or
I'll show you that real quick. Let's see. For a single system, let me scroll up. For a single system, to get it based on library, it's basically just calling .applicable errata. It's just the relationship, so that's everything. And then to trim it down to the environment that the system is in, there is a method. This here it is, available errata, and you can see you can pass in a particular environment or content view. It by default it just defaults to whatever the system is in. So this is saying get all the applicable errata, but trim it to only those errata in the repositories that the system is bound to. So, or go ahead.
And when we are reporting the bound repositories to the pulp, we are reporting all the repositories from all the environments of the content view, or of all the versions, or
let me show you that. We're reporting, so here, propagate yum repos, we're getting the bound repositories and getting the library instance and reporting that. So this is assuming that all the errata are available in the library instance.
Oh, okay.
Which is it's a safe assumption right now. I'm not sure why that would ever change. But if it did ever change, we could report both the repo that it's in and the library instance. That would be pretty easy to do.
I wonder if I promoted all the version of the content view, or but maybe the library instance is the one that is synced. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that should probably work. Thanks.
Is there a summary on the details page? Yeah, that's up next. Yeah, so Walden can kind of show what he's added if he wants. There was one thing real quick. This also updated the bulk errata page. So this is kind of what you mean, where it shows the affected counts. But this is currently only showing available. I don't know that we have a story to switch this to select from library. This is more meant for applying the errata. The stuff that Walden has started working on the errata page, I think would be better at reporting and seeing that information for what's applicable but maybe not available to the systems. Yeah. Okay, I think I am done if there are no more questions.
Cool. All right. So I'm going to show just a couple of UI changes around errata. Here on the screen now, you should see the new list of all errata within an organization, and you can see that we have all the information, the types, the title, affected content host. We'll probably want to change that into a link at some point that can that'll do a search for you and show you content hosts. And if you click on one of these, you get just a little details page that's based on the customer portal detail page. You get all the information on it. We're going to be adding a list of packages and products here in the future in next sprint. And then the other thing is over here on the content host page, as Stephen asked about, we're showing applicable errata by type here. So you can see that there and drill down into it. I think the moderator needs to click on Walden so it shows up on YouTube. All YouTubers are seeing is Justin's cat. Did you hear that, Eric?
Yeah, I clicked on you.
Okay, cool. Well, that's pretty much it. Just basically visual representations of some of the stuff Justin was just showing. I don't know if there's no question. That's pretty much the gist of it. I think that's all we have for today as well. So thanks for joining.
Bye.